Welcome on and all to the Math Magic Show. In this one we're going to learn how to find the derivative of y equals x to the x minus 1. So the first step is to learn how to rewrite this expression in a more useful form. So I'm going to set it equal to e to the ln of x to the x minus 1, and I can write that in that form because the e and ln functions are inverses. I could cancel them off and get back to x to the x minus 1. So that's useful, and then I'm going to take that x minus 1 and place it out in front of the natural log function, so it looks like e to the x minus 1 multiplying ln of x. And now, what is this telling me? What it's telling me is the following, that to differentiate, in other words, to find y prime, to differentiate with respect to x to the x minus 1, I can instead differentiate with respect to x e to the x minus 1 times ln of x, and the derivative will be what we need. So let's go through that process. So to differentiate e to the x minus 1 times ln of x, you can use the chain rule. So that tells us the following. First, copy the first part. So in other words, put down e to the x minus 1 times ln of x, and then just multiply by the derivative with respect to x of the exponent, which is x minus 1 times ln of x, just the way you see it there. Now, that first part, e to the x minus 1 times ln of x, that can be copied straight down in that position. So e to the x minus 1 times ln of x is copied. And then you just have to differentiate the product x minus 1 and ln x. So to do that, I'm going to use the product rule because x minus 1 is one function and ln of x is another function. So it's going to give me this. It's going to give me x minus 1 times 1 over x because that's the derivative of ln of x. And I'm going to add to it 1 times ln of x because that 1 that you see there is the derivative of x minus 1 with respect to x. Lastly, take a look here. This expression up across the top now, e to the x minus 1 times ln of x is equivalent to the original x to the x minus 1. So that tells us down below the following that can be done. I can replace it with x to the x minus 1. So in other words, e to the x minus 1 times ln of x can be replaced with x to the x minus 1. And then I can clean up the expression within the big parentheses a little bit by writing the following. I can say it's x minus 1 over x. And I can add to that just ln of x because 1 times that is ln of x. So the expression on the bottom is the derivative we've been looking for. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.